Hi guys, Chris with Microsoft here with another exciting episode of What's New in Windows Server 2012. Last couple episodes we've been talking Hyper-V. And today we're going to be talking about a new product that is built into Hyper-V called Replica. Replica is a DR scenario. This is Contoso DC2. We've been using this in a previous couple of our episodes. We live migrated DC2 over from DC2 over from our Hyper-V host number 11 right here. So we've done that, but let's say that what we have is a need to have a copy of DC2 ready and available out at our DR site. For us to be able to turn on at any given time. Now, please do not confuse. A lot of administrators that I work with confuse high availability and disaster recovery. They are not the same thing, guys. Make sure you understand that DR is not something that should just switch on automatically. DR is something that the IT department makes a decision about. We decide. Came into work this morning, except the data center had burned to the ground, smoldering ashes. Well, it's probably a good time for us to turn on the DR solution. We get together as a team, all the server people do the server stuff, all the OS people do the OS stuff, and the network people most especially do the networking stuff. This is not HA. HA is, hey, we detect a failure and automatically it fails over and turns something on and makes something available to the users again that wasn't a moment ago because of some kind of failure. Okay, so this is a DR scenario. So what we're talking about is sending. We want to pretend like this Contoso host 10 here with this Contoso DC2. This is our primary data center is what we're pretending right now. And we're pretending Contoso DC2 is like a line of business super duper critical server that we don't want to ever have the capability of not being able to bring online should a giant wall of water hit our data center and swallow it up and suck it out to the sea. This is our DR site. Contoso host 11, on the other hand, this is the disaster recovery site. This is where our stuff comes online should horrible, terrible things happen. So what we want is we want to make DC2 be able to come online out at the other site. And so what we've done here is just two Hyper-V boxes. That's really all that's been done so far. We've enabled Replica and stuff like that, but that is not really necessary. Any of the previous things that we've done in the previous couple of videos are necessary at all. None of that is needed. We just need to be able to turn this on and configure it. So the first piece of this, we need to actually tell Hyper-V that it's okay to be a replica server. So with Contoso host 11 selected, I'm going to go into Contoso host 11's Hyper-V settings, and I'm going to go down to replication configuration. Right now, it is not configured. This is the default behavior. I have to check that box. I have to tell it how we're going to authenticate between the two. Now, if I were not joined to the same domain or part of the same forest, I would need to use a certificate, but these are both members of the Contoso.com domain. Actually, they're the members of the Fabricam domain. Contoso is a separate domain where all the VMs are. So as you can see, this is a layer of security that I have. Fabricam are a couple of boxes that are joined to one domain. The production important VMs are a different one, but as long as they can authenticate, we can use Kerberos. And so that's what I'm going to pick here. I'm going to use Kerberos, and we're going to use HTTP base Kerberos here. And I'm going to go ahead and just say allow replication from any authenticated server, but I'm going to put that right out here where all my other Hyper-V servers are. Just for me, a little bit easier because it's all right there. You would do something quite a bit different, like perhaps allow from specified servers, then add your servers in one at a time. You can even wildcard that. And however you want to make this work, it's maybe Contoso.com, for instance, and then put those into various locations. For simplicity of this lab and this quick little demo, we're going to just kind of toss everything in that one folder. So yay, there. So what it's telling me is, hey, you better turn on your firewall because I'm not going to do it for you. Since I'm using port 80, we need to make sure 80 is open. It is. I've actually got the firewall turned off in this case. At least I hope I do. Let's check it to make sure. Local server, configuration, and we will creep along here for a second. There we go. Yes, everything is off on the firewall for right now since this is my lab not a big deal. All right, now that it's turned on, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on as well on the other one, just in case I ever need to come back the other direction. I'm going to go ahead and go into my Hyper-V settings, into Repl config, I'm going to turn on replication, use Kerberos again, and I actually don't have a D drive on this machine. It's kind of puny, little bitty guy, but I'm going to tell it, hey, if you ever do get one, throw it there. So there you go. Now we're configured. And that's it. That's all it takes to turn on Hyper-V Replica. The Replica itself, however, is actually enabled per VM. So if you've got 18 VMs on this one box and only 3 of them are super important to you, you would just enable them one at a time. The way we do that is just right-click the VM and we say Enable Replication. Now, before we start that, note that I'll go to the Replication tab for DC2 here and see that it's not actually doing anything. This is a really quick way to find health for replication later. We'll get to that in a sec. Enable Replication opens a wizard. It needs to know where you need to send this. So that other one that we just turned on, that whole Contoso host 11, that's where we're sending it. So Contoso host 11 should go out and find the configuration for me. If you see a yellow bang down in this area down here, it could be that you forgot your firewall. So you need to go back and check that. But most of the time it will be able to find the configuration. See, I told it curb, I told it port 80, and as a result it picked up on that and it said, okay, we're good to go. So now we say next. So it's asking me what disks do we want to move over there? What are important to me? This is the only time you get to make this choice, guys. This is probably the only downside to Replica, is if I add another hard drive later, since the entire drive is what gets sent out there, I'm going to need to tear down Replica for just that VM and then build it again, because I'm going to have to give it decisions on how to get the virtual hard drive out to the DR site. Something that can't be done on the fly in the interface as it is today. So this will be the time that we decide what drives we want to shoot out there. I'm picking the only one we have, obviously. Then we get another interesting question. What do we want to actually send out there? As you can see, the default option is to just send out the latest recovery point. What that means is I can just recover at any given time from this server out at my DR site. But if you would like to keep some additional snapshots, so let's say that we kick on the DR site at 4 o'clock in the morning because a big fire swept through the data center. Well, that's just a fire. Well, not that just a fire is anything that we should take lightly, but what if it was a virus? If a virus hit at 12 and you didn't find out till 4, it might be nice to be able to roll the DR site back to 11 or 10. So the more of these additional recovery points you pick are how many of these snapshots it's going to keep. One for every hour, and you can roll back into history. If you turn this on, you can also get application consistent VSS replicates. Well, I shouldn't call it application consistent, but it'll pick up the VSS snapshots every X number of hours, along with this. So your only concern here is disk space, and I don't have any, so we're not going to turn any of that on. But this is all of the extra stuff you could do this. Now the next question is all about how do we get it out there, right? So we can either send it out right now, maybe not a great idea in the middle of the day, but you could schedule it to start tonight, right? Today's 5/14 as of this filming. So I could say, hey, about 6 p.m. we go ahead and kick that off. Well, there's nobody actually using this, so I'm going to go ahead and kick it off immediately. But I could also come over here and export this thing out to like an external drive, which I don't have. But if I did, why would I do that? Well, let's say that the DR site is in town, which isn't a very good idea, by the way. But if that's the best you guys can do, that's what you've got. Well, if you got a really kind of small bandwidth link between you and that other office, take off early that day, drive over to the DR site with your external USB drive and have it with you so you're not sucking up bandwidth to get it there. So those are your options there. You could also use a backup, as you can see this, by using existing Replica. That does occur on a recovery option. I would use one of the first two and only use this in a scenario that I'm going to show you in a demo coming up after a little while. And we say next and we say okay, good. So it's going to start creating this Replica server immediately after clicking finish because of the options that we got. You can see back here it says I'm sending the initial Replica. says, hey, it's already done, cool. It's sending it out there. It's not obviously finished with that, but you can see the initial replica is being sent, and if I go over to that other server, I should see that it's receiving the changes now. So this will continue for a while, depending on how big of a server is being sent out there, and also depending on how fat of a pipe you have will be completely dependent on how long this takes to get out there. Mostly what is copying over for me, because I kind of faked this out as a differencing disk, so it's not very big. The parent should be out there. Hopefully I copied that, or this thing's going to blue screen the second it tries to fail over. We'll know that when that happens. So anyway, this will take a few minutes. While that's copying out, let's talk a little bit under the hood of what's going to happen once this actually starts working. Once this kicks off, Replica is going to keep an eye on that VHD, on the source. So on Contoso host 10 in this case, every 5 minutes it's going to look for any changes on the drive. And it's going to send a little HRL file, or a hurl file, I like to call it, because it's hurling it out to the data center, right? Little 5 minute, think of them as miniature snapshots of a save state. Probably the best thing, well, it's not even really a save state. It's just differences on the drive. So every 5 minutes, it's getting another copy, and it's compressing it, and it's packaging it up in a little HRL file, sending it out to your DR site, Mr. Contoso host 11 in this case, and he's going to pick it up and integrate it in. So we're always within 5 minutes of whatever the production site was out at the DR site. Before you start asking, no, this is not configurable, and no, there's not any way around it. You can't really defeat that by trying to like pause replication and turn replication back on. It remembers when the last 5 minute snapshot was sent, and so it will wait until the next 5 minutes until it does it again. But data is compressed. A lot of people will ask me, well, how much bandwidth is this going to take up? Well, that is completely dependent on how busy this server is. You know, this is your source server, Contoso DC2. So however busy this guy is will depend on how much stuff's going to go out there. And by busy, I mean changes, right? So if it's a lot of read operations, well, that doesn't change the drive, so that's not going to cause you a problem. But if it's a lot of write operations, then yes, you could think about, well, is the pipe between me and my DR site fat enough for me to be able to have a solution like this? So anyway, so those are some things that are kind of considerations. You need to remember, once again, this is a business continuity and disaster recovery type solution. Don't think of this as a replacement for your backup. This is not a fault tolerance solution. They are totally different worlds. They do not have anything to do with one another. There are fault tolerant solutions out there, and this is not really it. Some other things to talk about on the configuration of this will come up after we actually get it finished replicating out, such as things like what can you do from the target site, what can you do from the source site, in the standpoint of what actions you have, because they are different. One site is a little bit different than the other site. So I'm going to pause the video for now and wait for it to finish getting that copied out. Looks like Contoso host 10 has kind of quit responding to my remote desktop connection anyway, so I need to go and kind of give it a little kick in the pants. And so I'll unpause the video once this thing is enabled, so we can talk about the things that we can do with these once they have been enabled and they are up and working. Okay, so there we go. Alright, so we've got a running DC2 over here on Contoso host 10. So let's look at a couple of things here on this side that have changed before we look at the other side. So first off, you can see that we're running. Not a lot has changed. Every once in a while you're going to see, and you may catch it in the video, I don't know if you will or not, but every once in a while you're going to see, every 5 minutes actually, exactly, you're going to see it sending the replica. It only takes a couple of minutes, and or moments rather. Down here on this replication tab at the bottom, this is where we can tell that replication is enabled. We can tell the last synchronized time, and we can see replication health status is normal. So this is a good indication that that we do have a replica on the server. We can see what the replica is going out to. If you get a bunch of these, this can be kind of handy, because there's really not any indication up here that there's anything going on. From at least the host status standpoint up here. So if we go into the property pages for Contoso DC2 and under its settings, there's a new couple little pieces and parts of information that appear. They're not up here in the hardware section, so I'm going to go ahead and collapse that for a moment. Notice that we have a brand new replication piece that has been added. Now again, this is on the VM. This virtual machine will carry this configuration around with it. Why is that important? If I live migrate this, like we did in a previous episode, to another Hyper-V host, it's going to take this replication configuration right along with it. So you don't have to worry about where it's at, whether it's in a failover cluster or not. It's going to take its stuff with it. Okay, so we can see the configuration of how we're talking to the other host. You can tell what kind of authentication we have. You can see we actually can change those bits and pieces. If I break that out, you're going to see under here that we have the recovery points. If you remember in the setup wizard, we told it just the latest recovery points. But if I decided after the fact that I wanted to change that and have a few extra snapshots that I could roll back to, or go ahead and pull over VSS, all of that information can be changed right here. And as you can see, I'm doing it on the fly while this thing's up and running. Replication VHDs, as I mentioned before, this isn't something we can modify on the fly at this point in time. If I needed to add more hard drives, then I'd need to come and rerun that wizard. I'd need to kill replication, and I'd need to rebuild it. Resynchronization is an important piece. This is a decision that you need to make. The default is to resync after hours, at least what it conceives of after hours, in this case at 6:30 p.m. Alright, so resynchronization is a concept that comes into effect when we have a problem. So initially I told you that every 5 minutes we're going to package up a batch of changes, and we're going to compress them, and we're going to HRL file them or hurl them across over to your DR site. So we're gonna send this little file over every 5 minutes. If things get interrupted, no problem. It's going to pick up and it's going to catch up the backlog. But if there's more than what would take to catch up the target, if it's more than what would take 6 hours over a 1.5 meg connection, then we're going to go into a resynchronization. Now, you can tell it to manually resync, which means you decide when it's time to go catch up the DR site, automatically, immediately start a full resynchronization, or start it tonight. And that's usually a pretty good way to go. Maybe pick midnight or some other time. But just remember, this is a full resynchronization. Therefore, it's going to take a little while for it to get out there, approximately the same time that it took you to get it out there to begin with, unless you got a lot more data than you had before. So that's what resynchronization is all about. Just remember, this is when we get so many backed up packets that it's going to take, once again, more than 6 hours to replicate the entire set of packages that have been missed. With over a 1.5 meg connection, regardless of what your bandwidth actually is. So that's the calculation that's used to determine when we're going into resync. Some folks may want to do manually. Personally, I would be afraid that I'd forget to check on things like that and would probably end up missing it, so I'll probably leave the default. Alright, so those are the changes that happen on the source server. There's few actions that can only be done from the source server or from the target server, and there's a bunch of actions that you can do from either side. So we're going to right click on this, and we're going to look under replication. We'll talk about some of the things we can do from here. As you can see, I could do a planned failover, I could pause the replication, I could view the replication health, or tear down the replication by doing a remove replication wizard. The view replication health is a little more in-depth than the little tab that we're seeing below here. So if I pull the view replication health, it's going to bring up showing me the average size of the packets. Now obviously, having just sent over that entire VM, it's a rather large size, but after this has been running for a while, it's going to change a little bit. So we'll see latency data, we're going to see how many actual successful replication cycles we've had, we're going to see the last time that it resynced. You can see that it's less than 5 minutes ago, so pretty healthy looking right now. This is in good shape. You can always reset the statistics at any time. You can hit refresh at any time. And that can be done from either side. As you can see, if I right click on over here and look at our MS, who did we replicate? DC2, We would have the same kind of set of features here as far as view replication health, so he can run the replication health report as well. So it looks similar, but it's not exactly identical, but we'll get into some of those extra changes here in a minute. So some of the things we could do from here are also planned failover and pausing replication. Pausing replication just kind of puts a pause on this, but again, if you leave it paused too long, and it's going to take longer than 6 hours for it to get all the package, all the stuff caught up to date, you're going to go immediately into a resync, and it's going to stay there until it actually gets the ability to do that. So. Planned failover means we have a disaster and it's on its way, but it's not here yet. A good example maybe is a giant wall of water headed towards the data center. So being that that's the case, the wall of water hasn't gotten to us yet. The neat thing about a planned failover, though, is we get to catch up. We don't have a 5-minute miss here. I told you that every 5 minutes something got shot over, but if I do a planned failover, this is obviously the better way. The data center is still up, but maybe it's not going to be for long. We have a short amount of time maybe to get something accomplished. This would be the thing to do. We do a planned failover. It's going to go ahead and get everything caught up, and it's going to make the other side of this equation become the primary. So that's pretty much all you can do from this side. There's a lot more interesting things that can be done over here on the opposing side. Now, first off, you'll notice that your replica server, the target of it is actually going to be off, and that is normal. You want it to remain off. You can see the replication health down here. So you can see replication enabled. You can see the current replica, the current primary, where it's at. So if you're on 11 and it says the current primary is on host 10, you know that you're actually the replica, and then that's what this guy's doing. And again, when you go in here and look under the replication tab, you can see the view replication health. You can tear down replication and pause replication from here. This is one thing you can only do from here. It's called test failover. Now, test failover is kind of interesting. No DR plan is any good past if it's never tested. So your DR plan is essentially and effectively only as good as up to the last time you tested it. So there we go. Hey, we caught it. Receiving changes. Right there. We had just a brief moment where you saw it integrating the changes in. All right, so mention that one of the things we can do is doing a test failover. What you'll see is it'll actually create, using the latest recovery point in my solution, because it's the only thing I have, but you could do this with previous recovery points if you're keeping them. When I click test failover, it's going to create a copy of DC2. It'll even call it DC2 test. It's also off, and what's also interesting about it is it automatically disconnects that from any network. As you can see, it's not connected. That would be to keep you from colliding with the primary. I could then maybe attach that to a special network. Maybe we could create a virtual switch and call this a private network, and we could call this DR test net, and then attach some clients to this test DR net. And that way we don't ever have to worry about taking out our primary. Go into the network adapter, attach it to it, DR test net, not collide with the primary network, but still be able to turn it on, attach some other clients to this thing, pull it up, and make sure everything is running and happy on it. And notice that it's kind of powering up now, and it's booting up and doing its thing. So this is kind of what it does. All right, so we're going to let him boot up there. We'll talk about some of the other things we can do with this. Now that we have started a test, we can do a stop test failover, which we'll do in just a moment. So let's see, isn't he up yet? And now there we are. So action, Control Delete. You can see we're actually able to use this virtual machine. Stop test failover is going to kill it. No, don't delete. My aim needs some improvement, clearly. Stop test failover is going to say, hey, I'm getting ready to kill this thing. So I say stop test failover, and boom, it's gone. All right, so that's how we test our DR strategy. Right here, this is the other side of that DR. Now, we said giant wall of water approaching the data center. In that case, we had time. We could make some decisions about how to bring things on. In this case, let's say that we came in that morning, giant wall of water has hit the data center. Well, obviously, if the giant wall of water has already hit it, or maybe a smoldering ashes, big fire, whatever it happened to be, we lost that server. It's dead to us now. So and probably never coming back. So and in this case, we're going to do a failover, which means we'll be able to bring this server up within the 5-minute period of time since the last time that HRL file made it to it. So flames were lapping through the data center and approaching the poor rack, melting cables as it goes. At some point in time, it finally missed its communication. That was the 5-minute boundary by where we could restore from. We hit failover. We're going to pick a recovery point, and you're going to notice this isn't going to work. So it says, "Oops, I can't failover." So this is an idiot-proof thing to keep me from accidentally turning on the DR site's VM, even though because the primary production is not on. It knows that there's nothing wrong with the primary site, so it knows that there's not any that if we bring this on, we're going to collide. So this is a protection mechanism to keep me from hurting myself. Okay, so that isn't going to work because it's still on. So what we might do is come over here and simulate a failure. So a planned failover is kind of interesting to look at too, but for right now we'll just pretend like this guy died. So we'll kill him. Sorry, you can hear my 7-year-old in the background. So now I can right click and say replication. And hit failover and say, hey, there was our latest recovery point, which you can see wasn't now. It was about a minute and a half ago. And boom, he's up. So I switch back over to him, and it starts to bring itself back up. So now we have the DR site as our active site, and that brings up another action that comes up into this pane. This is called the oops, we didn't mean to do that, called cancel failover. And so if I hit cancel failover, what that means is somebody over here in the DR site thought that the production site was dead, and it wasn't really dead. So we need to cancel failover really quickly and hope that everything comes back the way it was. All right, so canceling failover, it's oops, I didn't mean to do that. And now I can bring this guy back up. And we'll wait for him to get up and running again. Now we're going to see some interesting things happening on the replication health. So you can see we're still showing no errors encountered. Everything's doing good. We had less than 5 minutes ago. We need to pause the video so that we can get past that 5-minute threshold. And we'll take a look at things after having canceled failover and see what the replication health looks like between these sites. And I'll pick back up with you in just a second. Okay, so there we go. So we got 9 out of 9, 100%. Everything's working. So this is good because we had an oops event. Somebody tried to enable the DR site when the production site was not necessarily dead. So we were able to get it back. We didn't have to do a full resync, and everything was okay. So then we look at the planned failover. So we're going to go back over here to the primary site, and we're going to say, giant wall of water, oh dear God, heading for the data center, got to do something, hurry, hurry, hurry. I could try to do a planned failover, but it's going to come up and say, here's my little prerequisite check, let's try it, and it's going to say, oops, we're not in the position to be able to do this. There's one extra step that we have to do to successfully get it out there, and just for the most safe possible way to get it there, we're going to do not do a turn off. Do a nice graceful shutdown. And so it's going to start its shutdown process, and it's going to start doing its not pulled the plug type of shutdown. And now that we're there, we can say replication plan failover. It'll start its requisite check, and it's going to come over here and make sure everything is okay, and it's going to kick on reverse replication, and it's going to perform that operation in progress. We've successfully reversed roles here, and now he's off and receiving changes until the wall of water hits the data center, and maybe it doesn't, right? Now he's the primary. We can do plan failover again, view replication, remove replication, etc., etc., etc. All here because he's the primary. Replication, health are all in good shape now. So we've got the counters have all reset because we're now over here, but we can see less than 5 minutes ago we got things up and going. So we have him as the production box at this point in time, and him as the replica. So effectively, doing a planned failover gets you a reverse replication automatically. Reverse replication, you noticed, was one of the options when we did our failover before. That's the extra step that you would do in a normal failover standpoint. So let's pretend like, okay, we have already gone back. This is now our primary production site. We're now treating this as our DR site. Okay, so let's simulate the failure again. Big fire comes along and kills this guy. He's gone. We come in, smoldering ashes. We can't find most of the servers, etc., etc. So we go ahead and we say failover. There's no choice. We have to do from the upwards of as much as possibly 5 minutes of data loss in this situation. And we're back online. It's sad. We miss our beautiful, lovely data center, but we've got our core services coming back online. All of our line of business applications. We can get payroll out. People aren't complaining because the paychecks aren't showing up because we didn't properly think ahead of time on how to deal with this stuff. And so we're up. Okay. Now, obviously, being that he is doesn't have a replication partner, when we look at the replication health, we've got a warning now. So we would have to reverse replication to resume. So the only way you would be able to reverse replicate this is going to be if the server turned out, oh yeah, we saw lots of ashes, but turned out those were bulletproof servers, man. Somebody spent some serious cash on those things. And they were all hunky healthy. Everything was good. In that case, we might actually be able to salvage this problem. In which case, that's when we get the whole reverse replication. And whoa, had a property page open there. Let's make sure we have everything closed out before we kick off that wizard. Replication, reverse replicate. Now we're going to go through this wizard again. Okay, so what we're telling it is, okay, we're gonna replicate back over to that from 10 to 11. We're not gonna change any of these latest recovery points. All of these little, hey, what do you do to get this thing going stuff out there. Except what we want to do this time is say use an existing virtual machine on the replica server because it's already out there. So I told you before, there's one situation where we might use this option over others, and this is that one. So we're going to go ahead and say immediately, because maybe it's Saturday afternoon and it's a good time to go ahead and get reverse replication enabled. Come over here, you'll see that it does go back into initial replicate. When we do a reverse replication, you're almost always going to see a full init sync, initial synchronization, kick off, just to make sure that we absolutely don't run the risk of a bad copy out there. And it's going to initially synchronize and push everything back out there. There's a couple of other ways we could have done that since obviously we went in such a short period of time frame between failure and not failure, and we're going with a known good copy that you maybe wouldn't have done things quite exactly that way. But that in a lot of cases you may even remove replication altogether, build a new data center, put a server out there, and start the wizard over again. Have a replica so that we're building out a set of good VMs over at the primary production site, and then on the Saturday afternoon we're going to do a reverse replication and get everything out of the DR site and back over to the primary once it's rebuilt. And so those are some of the ways you might go about doing that. So this is this is the mechanics of most of the stuff you would do on an everyday kind of a typical replica setup. And when we start talking about the clustering stuff in an upcoming episode or series of episodes, we're going to talk about a different role called the replica broker role. As I mentioned, from the source guy here, it really doesn't matter as far as whether he's clustered or not. It just doesn't matter because the virtual machine actually carries that configuration around with it. So cluster, no cluster, you go from one host to another, he's going to take that configuration with him. It does matter if the DR site's going to be in a failover cluster. Now, they can't be in the same failover cluster. Don't try to do that. It'll refuse to even allow you to set up the replica. And if you are doing this from a cluster, you're going to need to set it up from the cluster because that's when you will see enable replication when you right-click and see. And I'll show you that when we do some of the clustering modules in an upcoming episode. But it's important to understand that you will have an additional role, which I'll cover in a bit. And it's called, well, not in a bit, but in a future episode in my failover clustering piece of this What's New in Windows Server 2012 series that I'm filming. That's going to be the replica broker role, which is a new role in 2012 failover clustering. So one thing I did not show you here, and it's a final little piece. Every once in a while you get different theories about how a DR site should be set up. Some people mirror their network configuration identically. One side and the other side are both exactly the same. Some people on the other side, however, will have a different IP configuration. If that's your case, you'll come under the network adapter settings. You'll see this new failover TCP/IP. That's where you would check this box and you could tell it, here are my alternate settings for out there. So just depending on what your situation is, this is where you might end up going to do some of your configuration. So anyway, guys, that's Replica, and I hope this is something that you guys can use. I'm really excited about it. I think it's pretty cool technology, and I'm looking forward to seeing how some of the people out there will use this. Again, this is built into just Hyper-V. Right now, Hyper-V is just built into Windows Server. So Windows Server 2012, if you got it, you got Hyper-V. If you got Hyper-V turned on the box, which just requires a reboot and running through a quick little wizard, you're going to have this failover stuff, and it's just there. You don't have to put any additional roles or features or configure anything other than what we've covered here in this video to get it up and running. I've been doing this for 36 minutes, and we've had just about every scenario. You could probably have one up and running in about 10 minutes. It's really just not that complicated. So hopefully you'll be able to use this. Hopefully this is something that interests you. So anyway, guys, this has been Chris from Microsoft, and as always, thank you for watching. If you did find anything useful or interesting about this, please give it a quick like. Feel free also to subscribe to my channel in the link below. And also my blog is at 9z.com. Really, really easy to remember. Just the last number and then the last letter.com. That's got links to my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my Twitter. So again, thanks a ton for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.